Only 3 methods on true and false. By the way, true and false has exactly the same, these 3 methods. They are, I don't know, so Ruby is so great that we can subtract like methods array. Well, this is, I do, all the time, right? And the answer is here, and ampersand, vertical bar, and then caret.
Question that maybe you have, that I also had for a long period, and I still have, why Ruby don't have Boolean classes. And here it's Masafumi, who is the organizer of KIG on Rails. And he will introduce himself and talks us about why doesn't Ruby have Boolean classes. A big round of applauses.
Okay, so why doesn't Ruby have Boolean class? Disclaimer here. So this talk is not about AI. No AI is present on the slides and talk. So Buna Ziwa, the pronunciation correct? Buna Ziwa, good day in Romanian. I want to pretend to be local people, and it's not failure. It's a failure anyway. Buna Ziwa, the only phrase I know about Romanian language. So. Actually, this talk has its original talk in Japanese. Back in 2024, January, I gave a talk about this similar topic in Japanese. And the conference name was called Buri Kaigi. So Buri is not Ruby Kaigi, Buri is a fish, yellow-tailed fish. It's famous in Japan. It's really delicious in this kind of season, winter. So Buri Kaigi, and I wanted to submit a proposal to Buri Kaigi. It sounds like Boolean Kaigi, because in Japanese we have no difference between L and R. So Buri sounds like Boolean, and I came up with the idea. Oh, why not talking about Boolean? So that's why I wanted to talk about this one. But it turned out to be a kind of interesting topic. So let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Okura Masafumi. So Masafumi is my first name. Okura is my family name. But in Japan, we put family name first. And I think like years ago here in Romania, it was also the same, like family name first. So call me Masa. And I'm from Japan, Tokyo. I work as a freelancer, but I'm kind of known as the founder and chief organizer of KIG on Rails, which I talk about a little bit later. And speaker, RubyConf Taiwan, Euroco, Red Dot Ruby Conference, Rails World. So a week ago, Rails World, different topic, and Friendly.rb. And I do some open source work, such as Alba, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, maybe tomorrow. And my favorite method is instance eval, because it's indispensable. It's so important for metaprogramming. I like metaprogramming and DSL so much. And so, as I mentioned, last week I gave a talk about Rails 1.0 source code in Rails World. Eventually, I turned out to be a Rubyist on Rails. So this photo is the one I took 2 days ago in Vienna, near the Donau River. So I'm so happy to be finally, Rubyist on Rails. So let me talk about KIG on Rails a little bit. So KIG on Rails is an annual conference in Japan, in Tokyo, focusing on Ruby on Rails and web. And this year, it's September 26th. So calculate the difference. It's like 16 days later ahead. Yeah. So quite soon. We welcome 2 keynote speakers. And one is like Samuel Williams, a rack maintainer. And actually we have 2 speakers from outside of Japan this year too. And one is Andre and another is Marco. So like, yeah, it's so interesting to meet KIG on Rails speaker here in Romania. And this is the QR code of KIG on Rails website. So we will have the KIG on Rails next year too. So why doesn't Ruby have Boolean class? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about 2 things. One is fact, how Ruby implemented a Boolean class or a Boolean related class in classes and methods in Ruby. And the second one is opinion. I'm going to talk about why we don't need Boolean class anyway in Ruby. So takeaways are these, the Ruby way about Boolean. So, so we know that, in Ruby, there's no Boolean class, but we don't know why. Let's dive into that topic. And the design principle of programming language. So I'm introducing a Matz thought in his opinion about Boolean class. So like he decided not to add it, right? And yeah, so the original talk, Matz wasn't there. And here also, Matz isn't here, but I will talk about it in the at the very last of the talk. So the fact, I'm going to talk a little bit. Let's open up IRB. Do you know the answer? TrueClass. True.class. TrueClass, yes. What is a true superclass of TrueClass? Object, right? What about this? TrueClass.new. Do you know the result? It's an error. It's no method error. Okay. What about toBool? For example, like 42.toBool. Then, of course, like there's no method such as toBool. However, it's so easy to do this. ToBank, right? And that's the power of Ruby, because when we open, like this, when we open up object class and define toBool method, then do this. Now, magically, this works. Now we successfully implemented toBool method. So it's the beauty of Ruby. Maybe DHH is kind of like interested in this kind of thing, but anyway. And so, for example, if 42 puts 42 is true, else puts 42 is false, and like 42 is true. And let's open up like nil. Nil is true here, and nil is false. Guess the result. Yeah, so nil is false. So and nil is falsy. And what about empty string? Do you know? Well, actually, yeah. So empty string is true. So sorry, it's a little bit hard to see, but let's do it again like this. Yeah. So and here's a kind warning. It doesn't make sense to put empty string on the if clause. So that's what Ruby does about Boolean class. So TrueClass and FalseClass as a class for true and false, but it's called singleton class, which means there's only one instance belonging to the class. So you cannot call new, as we saw. And TrueClass and FalseClass don't have a common parent class such as Boolean class, right? And there's no toBool method. It's easy to implement. And any object can be used in if clause or like whatever, wherever. An empty string is true. So, in other languages, it's different. Like, for example, like in Java. So actually, I mentioned, there's no AI, but actually I used AI to, search this fact, So in Java, true and false are immediate values. It's not even an object. And in some languages like Java and Haskell, like only true and false are accepted for if clause. And like JavaScript and Python have a method to convert any object into Boolean. So in Ruby, everything is object, everything. And in Ruby, every object has its own class. So there's no object without class. By the way, there are 3 classes which are called singleton class. So we saw true class and false class, but also like new class. And we are so annoyed by new class. I mean, no method error on new class, That's the most annoying error in Ruby. So we can say that, they exist, but not really like practical. They're not really practical. Because V is a true class and V equal true. And they're equivalent, right? Because if it's true, then it should belong to true class. And if it belongs to true class, then it means it's true instance. Okay, so these are kind of facts, maybe some opinions, but let's go to the opinion part. We don't need Boolean class anyway. Here's a bug report, actually feature request in Ruby's official bug tracker. The title is Create Boolean Superclass of TrueClass FalseClass, which we were just discussing. and the status is rejected. True, so it's kind of long. Let's read out the underlined part, like true and false are the only representative of true false values. So this is a quote from Matz. What does it mean? So true and false are the only representative. This is kind of too obvious. It's kind of stupid. It feels stupid. True represents truth. False represents false. But in Ruby, like 42 represents also the true. 0 represents true. Empty hash represents true. And the string false represents true. I mean, right? And nil represents false. So let's dig into it. So in Ruby, basically, we can say that useful object have so many methods on it. Let's count empty hash methods of size. Do you know the answer? 179 methods in Ruby 3.4.4 because we use hash all the time. What about active record base? But it's hard to instantiate it, so I use the instance method instead. A lot, right? 402. The Rails version is 7. So maybe in Rails 8, maybe it's even more. What about true? Not 0, 66. That's not too many. And so let's compare to the bare object. Do you know the answer? 63. Well, only 3 methods on true and false. By the way, true and false has exactly the same, these 3 methods. They are, so Ruby is so great that we can subtract like methods array. Well, this is, I do, all the time, right? And the answer is here, and the ampersand, vertical bar, and then caret. So like logical operators only, no user behaviors. And by the way, true, false methods and true methods, and when we compare them, they're like exactly the same. Okay, so can we say that true is almost equal to false because their methods are the same? Of course not, because here's matrix of the ampersand method. So like the logical operator. Of course, the result is completely different. True and true is true. True and false is false. True and false and true is false. False and false is false. And so like it's kind of hard to see the blue part, but like true is blue. So vertical bar looks like this. And this is interesting, like caret method. So like true and true is false. True and false is false. No, true and false is true. False and true is true, and false and false is false. So like it's completely the opposite. So here's some conclusion, like true and false objects share little. So they are the only representatives, it's now quite useful. And let's talk about Boolean class a little bit. So in Wikipedia it says, in object-oriented programming, a class defines the shared aspects of objects created from the class. So the class exists for like sharing. And like Boolean class is a superclass of true and false, but superclass for sharing nothing. It doesn't make sense. There's no meaning for having a superclass of TrueClass and FalseClass as Boolean. This is a quote from Matz. So I think I can explain it somehow, why Matz told us like this. But you might say, it should be useful. Yes, I know. On the same issue, they mention one use case. That is a Boolean. Is a Boolean. This is actually useful. However, is a Boolean means equal to or equal to false, because there are only 2 instances of Boolean class, true and false. So we can compare 2 instances. And it's not too hard to write down. Again, Matz quote, many gems and libraries have already introduced Boolean class. I don't want to break them. So it's kind of interesting part. Compatibility issue. So you know that naming is hard. Naming is really hard. It's like, do you know Raptor? Well, maybe in this Friendly.rb there's no talk about parallelism, but last week at Rails World, Taylor Love talked about this a little bit. It used to be a guild, like 5 years ago or something, but the gaming company in Japan complained that they have already guild class in a like role-playing game or something, already killed class. So they complained, please don't break us, right? And then they renamed Reactor, like Ruby Actor. And data class was safe because Ruby already had that. And so they changed the purpose of it. However, Boolean class is different. They already defined Boolean class everywhere, so introducing Boolean class could break them. So here's the summary. True and false share nothing. I mean, just a little. So there's no meaning of superclassing, and only a few use cases. So is a Boolean is the obvious one. That's useful, but it's kind of hard to come up with other useful use cases for Boolean class. And of course, there's a compatibility issue. Like naming is hard. Like naming things Boolean might cause troubles. And lessons I learned after creating this talk. So like designing a programming language is really interesting. This only like Boolean, it's kind of trivial, you might say. But on the issue I mentioned, there's many interesting discussion and like debate about why is it good, why it's good, why it's bad, and so on. And no one had a correct answer. So Matz decided what to do. And the interesting and like kind of useful thought about this one is like this should be useful might not be the reason to add something. So when we think it's useful, and then we add all of them, maybe Ruby isn't as good as now, maybe. And Ruby is different from other languages. And this was the end of the slide in last month. Actually, I gave this talk last month. One more thing. This one is a title slide from my talk at RubyCon Taiwan in August last month. This exactly same title. In that conference, we had Matz there. And someone asked the question in my talk, and Matz answered him instead of me. And, this is kind of, how to say that in English? Like, how to say, like organic, like a farmer sells vegetables right to the customers, not supermarket, I'm kind of supermarket, like he's farmer. Right? It's so fresh and correct. And so here's a summary of his answer. Boolean class will be used to type checking, like is a Boolean, right? And he dislikes type checking. So he wants us to, duck type. Like he wants us to rely on behavior, not a class. That's why he denied it, he rejected that proposal. So that's his answer. So this is a like valuable addition to the slide from the RubyCon Taiwan. Okay, so thank you very much. Please contact me if you're interested in this talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.